Hi, this is Maggie.
Today we're in Eclipse, and we're imagining a scenario today where somebody has given you a JUnit file, and you are going to write a class that is going to be tested by this JUnit test case class. So how do you create a project and include that JUnit test case in it, and then run the JUnit tests and then interpret them? So we'll start by creating a project. So we're going to say new Java project, and we'll call it rectangle testing, because we're going to go ahead and use our old rectangle class, but this time we'll be writing the rectangle class ourselves. And I'm going to say finish. Now, on my project over here in the Package Explorer, I'm going to right-click and choose Properties. We can also choose it from the Project menu. And I'm going to go to the Java build path and click on the Libraries tab, and then click on Class Path. And then I'm going to click on Add Library, and I'm going to choose JUnit. I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to choose JUnit 5 from the drop-down, and then choose Finish. And then I can click Apply and Close. And you'll notice now we've got JUnit as part of our project. Now I'm imagining that we've been given the test cases that we're going to use. So I'm going to right-click on the SRC or source folder and choose Import from the context-sensitive menu that comes up. And then I'm going to choose General and File System, and I'm going to navigate to that file and import it into my project. Okay, so here it is. Rectangle test, and it's got lots of errors in it because it's testing a class called rectangle, which I haven't written yet. So I've already written a rectangle class. Let's imagine that I've been given a spec in the form of this Java doc, and I have a constructor and two methods, getArea and getPerimeter. This is very similar to the rectangle class in the video in which we imported a class file into our project, but this time we're writing it, we're not using it. So I'm going to do the same thing. I've already written it. I'm going to import it into the project. Okay, and now that I've imported it, all of those X's have gone away because I've got a rectangle class, but also, importantly, my class is going to match any of the method calls and constructors that are in these test cases. So for example, we see the constructor being invoked here, and there is only one constructor for this class, and it's being passed two double values. And my rectangle class has a constructor right here, line 22 to 25, I guess, that takes two double constructors. So there's no error there. Down here, I'm invoking both getArea and getPerimeter, and down here the test case is invoking getArea. So this is the first place where you might see errors if you're adding a JUnit test to a project, if you haven't written the class to specifications that are clear in the syntax. So if you aren't, for example, returning the correct data type and that's being used in a test case, or if you aren't taking the correct number of parameters, or they're in the wrong order, if they're the wrong type, then you're going to get errors in your test cases. So that's the first thing to check. And I'll just show you as an example. Suppose I had made the length in the constructor an integer. Now we can see there are errors in all of these constructors because what the person who wrote the test cases is passing in is a double. So that's the first place where you might see an error. And so you want to go back to the specification and make sure, I think I just accidentally cut that instead of saving. You want to go back to the specification and make sure that you're following the spec. Okay, so once you've got your test case in and you don't have any syntax errors, then you can run the test case. So I'm going to just click the Run button to run the test case. And over where the Package Explorer was, now I have a new tab, JUnit. And I can see that there were two tests and one of them failed. Test constructor error checking has an X. That's the one that failed. And if we go down to the failure trace, I get more information. So for example, it says expected 0 but was 1. And we can double click on that, and it just shows us again what it expected and what the actual output was. But we can also see what line that was on. So right here, rect bad init both getArea, it expected 0, but it was 1. So you can dig into that. You can look at what values are being passed into the test. if you have access to the actual code. You can look at what values are being passed into the test and try to figure out what went wrong. Now, in this case, why would it expect 0 if it was passing in -1? So why would it expect to get an area of 0 if what it's passing in for initialization values for the length and the width is -1? And if we go to the spec, we notice that it says if either or both parameters are negative, set both to 0. And did we do that? No, we're just setting the fields. I think it means, it should be a little clearer here. It should say set both fields to 0. So if either or both parameters are negative, set both fields to 0. Well, I would talk to the person who wrote the Java doc. That is what is intended here. So suppose you try to fix this. So you say, oh, okay. And by the way, this is a place where I think the ternary operator is a good choice, an easy choice. So we could say, oh, I want to set length equal to, well, if length is less than or equal to 0, then I'm going to set it equal to 0. So that will take care of, oh, sorry, not equal to. If it's less than 0, if it's negative, I'm going to set it equal to 0. And otherwise, I'm going to set it equal to the length parameter. And I'll do the same thing with width. So if the width value that gets passed in is less than 0, then I'm just going to set it to 0, and otherwise I will set the width field to the width parameter. Okay, so I think I'm all set. Go back, I'm going to run the test again. Oh no, I get the red bar. We want the green bar. And now it's failing. It expects 0, actual 20, and it's the same test that's failing, test constructor error checking. I thought I fixed the error checking in my constructor, so let's see, where is it failing this time? It's getting a bad perimeter. Why does it expect 0 on the rect bad init length? So rect bad init length, we pass in a bad value for length, but a good value for width. So length will have gotten set to 0, but width won't. So again, if I go back and look at the Java doc, it says if either or both, set both to 0. Oh, set both to 0. So if the length is less than 0, or, oops, that's not an or if the width is less than 0, then I want to set length to 0. Otherwise, I'll set it to length. If the width is less than 0, or the length is less than 0, then I'm going to set it to 0. So if either of them is 0, now I'm not so sure about the ternary operator. If either of them is 0, we're going to set both to 0. Otherwise, we're going to set them. I think it's still okay. I like it for assignment statements. All right, let's try again. So and let's think about it. So if the length is negative or the width is negative, then I'm setting length to 0. Yeah, so this should take care of for both of the fields. If either parameter is negative, then I have a nonsensical rectangle and I'm supposed to set it to 0. That's just the spec. Who knows, in what context this is going to make sense. The spec is if either of these parameters, which are meant to initialize the fields of my object, are negative, then I'm just going to set the whole thing to 0 because it didn't make sense. So let's go ahead and test it. And I get the green bar. That's what you want. That means that your class, as you've written it, has passed all of the tests that were written. This isn't necessarily an exhaustive set of tests over here. I was just writing some tests so that I could illustrate what would happen if we had some tests go bad and we tried to fix it, but then it continued to go bad. So I wanted you to see a few different ways that this could go bad and how to interpret those test results. Mostly I wanted to show you how to add a JUnit test case to your project in case you are in this situation. For example, if you're taking a course, maybe your professor has given you some JUnit tests and they've told you to write some classes to specs, and the tests they're there to help you. They're there to help you make sure that you're writing your class to all of the specifications. When you see a test case fail, you can go in, look at the specs again, look at your code, look at the test, and figure out where your code is failing so that you can fix it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have additional questions, if I didn't cover something that you're curious about, please feel free to write a comment. I will get back to you. Take care.